if you practice my music just as hard as you can, you're gonna get a reputation for being a loving man. You'll be glad every night that you treated her right. Well, well, well. believe my time is long. I get up in the morning, I wake up my happy home. I believe my time is long. Yes, I believe my time is long. I get up in the morning, I break up my happy home. Thank you very much.
In the late 1960s, a new type of music sprang up in the UK. It was dubbed progressive rock, and by the 70s, groups such as Yes and Emerson, Lake and Palmer were huge attractions, noted for grand concepts and even grander stage shows. The bubble burst in the late 1970s, when these bands were accused of being rock dinosaurs, but they survived and were given a new lease of life in the 80s and 90s. This is a story of the biggest bands of the progressive rock era.
Take a good look at yourself and tell your mama she'd only tell you that she told you so. The life you're leading, she won't believe the rest of the life we all know.
One of the bands that spearheaded this new music was The Nice, featuring a young Emerson. But their origins were far from the sounds of progressive rock. They started life as a backing band for soul singer and ex-Ket P.P. Arnold.
Keith and I went to a club called the Cromwell one night, and we were approached by P.P. Arnold's roadie and driver, a guy called Mickey O. He says, "Oh, I'm looking at you two." He says, "P.P. Arnold's got hit first cut." She wants to go out on the road, and she doesn't like the band she has at the moment. She wants a young kicking band. Do you fancy having a go? I said, "Oh, give that a try."
You know, I named them the Nice. They always had their own music and their own thing, and it was great watching them develop that, and that was all different, you know, with Keith with all their influence. So their music, the Nice, would come on and open up for me, and they would do the whole Nice.
The Nice sounded so different, and Oldham, owner of Immediate Records, wanted them to go solo.
While I was home in the States, Andrew stole my band.
The band, now out on their own, was searching for a new sound by experimenting with influences other than rock and roll, and developing a dramatic presentation.
We'd take a basically classical thing and put a thumping great beat behind it, or even sometimes no beat at all, but it would it was classical or contemporary classical music with a rock and roll feel to it.
I'd always felt frustrated sitting behind this piece of furniture, which is really what an organ is. You can't move around like a guitar player. You can't sort of do the tongue thing.
And finally, one silly night, he jumped over it.
A fight broke out in the audience, and there's all these French guys smashing shit out of each other. And I joined in, and I really, with the Hammond organ on stage, I started shaking it.
And exploded. And
And then eventually lifting up, smashing it on the stage. And then the fight stopped in the audience, and they looked up. What the hell is he doing?
And then came the knives, and he kept rhythm by throwing them into his Leslie cabinet. It was one of those revolving amplifiers that Hammond owns. I forget to sharpen them, and they'd come bouncing out, hit various members of the band, its road crew, and once even landed in the lap of poor lady in the front row who passed clean out.
The Knights were the only ones combining progressive rock and stage theatrics. Singer Arthur Brown was noted for it. This was drummer Carl Palmer's first exposure to a new type of rock show.
The show would start with Arthur with this huge womb would roll out onto stage. The centre stage would be 8 foot in diameter, and he would come from the middle of it with all this stretch cloth and dressed up like a babe. And it was an incredible sight. At the time, it was so far in front of everybody, you know.
I am the god of hellfire, and I bring you fire.
Arthur's trademark was a flaming headdress which he would wear while singing his hit single Fire. Singing it proved to be a problem.
The fire was actually at that point a vegetable colander with candles on it. That proved impossible because as the wax came down it would go through the hole and stick it to your hair. So we moved on from that. Next step was to get a pastry dish with piping, put a screw to the top of it, screwed it onto a leather strap, and then it went on my chin. But of course, it's somewhat difficult to sing with, and also the heat came down the screw onto my skull. It was very, very painful. But boy, did it make a big. You're gonna burn. Of course, also the last man was given to being drunk, and he was the one who poured the gasoline in. So he would slop it over my shoulders, up catch fire. I mean, it was people.
Around this time, classically trained keyboard player Rick Woodbourne was playing with the group Straubs. He found himself on the same bill as Arthur Brown at an unusual gig, a combination of show and circus.
What you did, you played with the different acts. So they had Arthur Brown playing for these artists because that was all action. We as Straubs were playing for the child jugglers who dropped everything. Arthur Brown only actually did one show because he came on with his hat on arm, the god of hellfire, split his trousers, arrested him, and he was taken away.
The Straubs didn't fare any better than Arthur.
I had one solo, one little electric piano solo, and like most musicians, you waited all night for your own little solo. Despite the fact that nobody listened, you waited all night. And it came to my solo, and suddenly there's a bit of a cheer from the crowd, and there was this old boy on stage with a handlebar moustache, waving his stick. I thought, "This I get them on stage," so I pushed him. Well, the police arrested me. I didn't know it was Salvador Dali.
The progressive movement was beginning to build. New bands were springing up, keen to experiment with psychedelic music. John Anderson, a singer with the Warriors and originally from Lancashire, was drawn to London looking for a new band to join.
And I started to work in a bar called the Shass Club, which was just overlooking street next door to the famous Monarchy Club. And that's where I met Chris. Now, Chris had this band called Mabel Greer's Toy Shop.
We were looking to be kind of a psychedelic, would-be West Coast kind of Doors-ish out band.
And I'm not going to join any band with that kind of name, because, you know, it's like psychedelic time. And that's why we decided to change the name from, you know, Mabel Greer's Toy Shop into Yes.
If there was a kind of a blueprint for the band, it was sort of able to come up with the band good instrumentally, and you know, and the Niles play at the Marquee Club, and we were impressed by their musical ability, and so we wanted to have that, but we also wanted to have the vocal harmony aspect.
We weren't interested in trying to make sort of pop commercial records because there was enough going on in that world, and I think I was about 27. I felt I was too old to be a pop band anyway, you know, and I was too small.
The lineup of the band was quickly settled on, and driven by John Anderson's ambition, Yes began to make a name for themselves.
Being taunted for being sort of a Napoleon figure within the band, that's because I don't play a guitar or I don't play a drum. I can only speak or physically ideas to everybody and come up with a passionate thought process.
John would usually start with a proposition along the lines, we're going to play this, and if we're going to play this until any people pick up something that's better than this. And what we would start playing was simply terrible. And after about 2 minutes, somebody would say, well, look, John, suppose, you know, we could improve this. If we have to, we could improve this by adding a minor ninth here and moving to the major seventh there. And John wouldn't know what that meant, but anyway, he'd say, well, go on then, do it. Very aggressive. Go on. I can hear it now.
The Nice, by now, had recorded what they described as the world's first instrumental protest song, a version of America from West Side Story.
Played it at the Royal Albert Hall. The event was an anti-apartheid, at which the American ambassador was going to be present. So we did America, and we reproduced on stage blank paper and aerosols the Stars and Stripes, and then set fire to it.
Just reached down and I set light to it. It was a painting. We'd been going down great until that time.
The moon went up. I think Keith's band playing in the Albert Hall was only rescinded about 2 years ago.
The Albert Hall incident aside, Keith Emerson grew frustrated with life in the Nice and wanted to try something more ambitious.
All ends are painful. And it must have been particularly painful for Lee and Brian.
Keith just woke up on Wednesday morning and decided he wanted to do different things with different people, and that was that. Gone. Brian, a bit of a shock, really.
Lee had a raucous voice, and I was writing melodic material, and I wanted somebody to sing what I was playing on the keyboards. And in order for bless him, to sing that, I mean, you'd have to stuff a carrot up his arse to get into the octave range that I wanted to get.
What Keith had in mind was a group that would avoid the obvious guitar-based lineup.
I looked for a lot of people at that time. I loved trio form. I was happy with that. I didn't want to work with another guitar player because they always cranked their amplifiers to number 11. and you couldn't be heard. So I was looking for a bass player that sang and was an all-rounder.
Keith approached several bass players and eventually teamed up with Greg from King Crimson. For a drummer, they turned to Carl Palmer, lately of Atomic Rooster.
In comes this bubbly character, very childlike, really, which was endorsed by the fact that on his bass drum he had this little noddy.
I'm not a noddy fan, by the way. It just happened to be what was happening at the time.
And the first thing we played was his shuffle. And Carl played the shuffle to end all shuffles. Man, it was like, from then he had me.
There was a deep love for classical music, which we all had, and we all had other things which we were listening to, sort of, as listened to kind of early 60s rock music and jazz. So the idea that we had as a band were quite eclectic.
The band, with its blend of classical and rock music, was an instant success. The first album went to number 4 in the chart.
I've seen all good people turn their heads each day so sad.
It took longer for this to take off. The band was still working their way towards a settled lineup.
We were getting some success, and I was always sort of like very, come on guys, let's rehearse. We got to rehearse, we got to get better, because you're only as successful as you are last week, and the next show you put on, you've got to give a bit more.
I seem to remember a culture in the band of wanting to do everything and having